Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the Adjutant General, Major General Alan Dohrmann, welcome to these hallowed grounds for the 30th anniversary observation of the dedication of the North Dakota Veterans Cemetery. I'm Shirley Olgeirson, retired from the North Dakota Army National Guard, and I'm pleased to be your MC for today. A few administrative notes. Restrooms are located inside the building. Cool refreshments are available beside the chapel. Please feel free, it's a hot day, so get your refreshments. And note that the metro area ambulance is available on site for any medical emergencies. Also, please at this time silence your cell phones. The first flags flown over the cemetery were raised by a team from the 191st Military Police Company to mark the completion of the Flag Plaza and the shell for what became the chapel. That was on October 25th, 1991, about 9 months before the cemetery opened. A ceremonial flag raising was also a part of the dedication ceremony 30 years ago, and we will continue that tradition today. The national anthem, performed by the 188th Army National Guard Brass Quintet, will immediately follow the flag raising. As the colors are raised, it is appropriate for military personnel and veterans to render a hand salute. Civilians are encouraged to remove hats and place their right hand over their hearts. We will retain salutes during the national anthem. Ladies and gentlemen, if you are able, please stand. Guests on the platform, please turn to the Flag Plaza as the beautiful flags of our nation and state are raised to full staff by the North Dakota National Guard Military Funeral Honors Team under the command of Sergeant Kevin Curley. Raise the colors. Present arms. Order, arms. The invocation will be given by Chaplain David Johnson.
Join with me as we open our time with a word of prayer. Gracious God, as we gather to observe the 30th anniversary of the North Dakota Veterans Cemetery, we remember veterans, past and present, who fought and who continue to fight for the many liberties and freedoms that we have in this country. For their service and their sacrifice, we give you thanks today. And as we gather this afternoon, we remember some of these same men and women who are laid to rest in this cemetery, alongside some of their family. We thank you for a place like this where we can gather to remember their service and give thanks for the life that we shared with them. And as we do this, dear Lord, we pray for all loved ones of those who are laid to rest in these hallowed grounds, that they might find comfort and strength for each new day. Dear Lord, as hard as it is to come to a place like this, at times we're grateful for those who had a vision to build the North Dakota Veterans Cemetery, and for all who've worked to make this cemetery a reality, a place where we lay our veterans to rest a place to remember the fallen, and a place that affords us the opportunity to reflect on their service to our state and nation. We give thanks as well for those who, day in and day out, care for these hallowed grounds. Bless them in their work and strengthen them as they continue to make this place a welcoming place for all who gather here to remember their loved one. And so, dear Lord, as we observe these past 30 years, we pause now to give thanks and to ask your blessing on this day and on this place. Bless this ceremony and our time together. In your holy and precious name we pray. Amen.
Thank you, Chaplain Johnson. Please be seated. At this time, I'll introduce the speakers for today's observance. United States Senator John Hoeven. United States Senator Kevin Cramer. The Honorable Matthew Quinn, Undersecretary for Memorial Affairs. Major General Al Dohrmann, the Adjutant General, and his wife Becky in the crowd. Retired Major General Alexander Macdonald and his wife Joan in the crowd. Also present are other Adjutants General. Please either stand or wave acknowledgement as you are introduced. Retired Major General Keith Bierke and wife Marion. Retired Major General Mike Hoeven. Retired Major General Dave Sprincenatic. Also, a warm welcome to all active and retired National Guard officers and senior enlisted leaders, state elected officials, members of the North Dakota Legislative Assembly, and a number of funeral directors who are here with us today. Thank you all for joining us. There are many individuals who played significant roles in the creation of the North Dakota Veterans Cemetery. It's difficult to recognize them all, but a few of those are here today. Retired Major General Robert Schulte, then Assistant Adjutant General. Retired Major General Murray Sagsveen, then National Guard Staff Judge Advocate, and his wife Christy. Retired Brigadier General Ron Gagnes, then National Guard Director of Facilities Engineering. Retired Colonel Larry Dennis, there he is, then Commander of 68th Troop Command and overall cemetery project manager. He was the gentleman who got things done on site, and the records he kept are of great historical value to our work. Thank you so much, Colonel. Retired, his wife Edna is joining him today, and his daughter, also from Minneapolis. Retired Colonel Greg Wills, then 164th Engineer Group Operations Officer and Assistant Project Officer. Retired Colonel Steve Tabor, responsible for architecture and design. Retired Master Sergeant Phil Miller, first Director of the North Dakota Veterans Cemetery. And current Director of the cemetery, Mrs. Pam Helbling Schaefer. Let's give those folks a round of applause for all they've done at the cemetery. The Veterans Cemetery Foundation is a board of volunteers with a mission of providing fundraising support for the perpetual operation of the cemetery. It is under the leadership of Brigadier General Jackie Huber, the Deputy Adjutant General. General Huber, would you and your board members please stand to be recognized? Thank you. Our program will begin with remarks from former North Dakota Governor and now Senior United States Senator for the state of North Dakota, Senator John Hoeven.
Thank you, Colonel Olgeirson, and thanks for your really lifetime of dedicated service to our nation in the armed services. And so appropriate that you're here as our Master of Ceremonies. How about the 188th Army Band? Are they great or what? I mean, they really are. I love listening to them. They play the national anthem and the other military music, and I don't know. To me, it's special. Maybe it's 22 years of listening to them, but I love them. They are really fantastic, and they make an effort to be at all of these events. So I want to thank them right up front. Thank you, Chaplain Johnson. Senator Cramer, good to be with you here. Senator Cramer is on the Armed Services Committee. I'm on the Defense Appropriations Committee. We have both sides of supporting our military, and we love it. And we love working together for our great men and women in uniform and our veterans. All of you are veterans. How about all the veterans that are here? Stand up, please. All of our veterans, please stand up. Yeah, let's show them some love. God bless you guys, men and women. Thank you. Thank you. Also, we do have Secretary Matthew Quinn, Undersecretary for Veterans Affairs. We're deeply appreciative of him being here. He has been out to the state a number of times. We're working with him here and in Fargo, and we really appreciate his commitment to all of you, our veterans, and the support that we're getting from him. Of course, I want to acknowledge Adjutant General Al Dohrmann, but also former Adjutant General Alec Macdonald. Alec Macdonald was actually the first Adjutant General ever named in the United States. He knew George Washington personally. So. Wow. Not really. Mike Hoeven, great to see you. Dave Sprinson. Leadership from our Adjutants General, and get that from Al Dohrmann again, or now today. But to you and your spouses, thank you so much, and for your incredible service and your incredible leadership for the no-kidding, absolute finest National Guard in the United States. Number one out of 50 plus. Never a doubt, never a question, never a question. So it's so appropriate that we're celebrating this 30th anniversary. So this State Veterans Cemetery was initially dedicated in 1992, and there's so many that have worked so hard on it. I've had the honor and privilege to work with them, with you, to try to make this the incredible State Veterans Cemetery it is. I think it is absolutely one of the finest, if not the finest, State Veterans Cemetery in the United States. And I've had the privilege now to work on it for 22 years as governor and as senator, and I'm committed to continuing to work on it. And there's so many here that have done so much to make it the incredible cemetery that it is for our heroes. Some of the things that I particularly remember, in terms of major enhancements, in 2005 we secured $3 million, and that was for enhancing the visitation center, chapel, maintenance buildings, sprinkler systems, and a number of other improvements. That was a big step, 2005. In 2015, General Sprinson at that time was the Adjutant General when I was serving as governor at that time, following a great service of Mike Hoeven. And he and Mark Zimmerman, who I'd appointed head of Parks and Recs, Parks and Recs gained some land, about 35 acres, from an estate. And so Mark Zimmerman, who was head of Parks and Recs in our cabinet at that time, and Dave Sprinson worked, and they secured 35 acres. We went to the legislature, got some funding, and also used the National Guard's foundation. And together we added 35 acres to this site in 2015. And that's 100 years of capacity that we added, and it about doubled the size. So we went from about 35 acres to 70 acres at this incredible site. And you have to remember, this is a historic site. It's not only beautiful, it's on the river, and it's, in such a beautiful part of our state, but here, this is a meaningful historic site. And so expanding it and having that capacity for the next century, it's a big deal and incredibly important. Thanks, Dave, for your leadership. And I don't know if Mark Zimmerman's here, but thank you as well. And to the legislature for supporting us in that endeavor. And there have been many other enhancements as well. I mean, if you haven't, I know most of you have, but go over and look at those beautiful walls on your way out. The photography in the stone is incredible. There's other places that have it, but this is as good as anywhere. It reminds me somewhat of the Vietnam Wall in Washington, D.C., the Vietnam Memorial Wall, and the way they've done it there. But our motorcycle groups, whether it was the Patriot Guard, the American Riders, Patriot Riders, all of our motorcycle groups really took the lead in raising the money for that wall. And those are the kind of things, so many people have worked together to truly make this, again, I think, arguably the finest state veterans cemetery in the United States over these 30 years. And we're not done yet. Secretary Matthew Quinn is here. Senator Cramer along with myself and Maggie Hassan, Senator Maggie Hassan, and Senator Jean Shaheen of New Hampshire passed legislation, the Burial Equity Act for the Guard and Reserves. We passed that first part of this calendar year, and essentially what that bill, that legislation does is it allows state veteran cemeteries that allow for the burial of Guard and Reserves in their families to qualify for federal grant funding from the VA. Right now, or before that, they did not. If you allowed Guard and Reserve members to be buried in your cemetery, you did not qualify for those federal funding programs. Now that our bill passed, we do. To show you how important that is, we're working on a columbarium now, which is very much needed, and we're working to try to secure $2 million to make that happen, which we can now qualify for because we passed that legislation, and also on I'm on Milcon VA, we secured about $50 million in funding for these kinds of projects and put it in the budget this year. So we're in position now to capitalize on that. Again, why we appreciate Undersecretary Quinn so much. He's here working with us on it. We're not there yet, but we're hard at work to get it, and we intend to do that because our veterans are the best, and so they absolutely deserve the best for our great veterans and their families. Thanks to all of you for being here today. Thanks to all of you who have done so much to support this wonderful cemetery, State Veteran Cemetery for our heroes. God bless.
Our next speaker is United States Senator Kevin Cramer, a member of the Senate Armed Services Committee and the Senate Veterans Affairs Committee.
Thank you, Colonel. Well, when you think about 30 years of history, she's the person that pretty much wrote it all. So it's very appropriate that you're our MC today, Shirley. Thank you. And Secretary Quinn, thanks for being here. Now, I have to tell you, as the Colonel said, I'm a member of the Veteran Affairs Committee, which means that Matt Quinn had to come to me for confirmation. And fortunately, he's from Montana. You'll learn more about that later. Right now he's very offended, by the way, by Senator Hoeven saying that North Dakota has the best National Guard, but it's indisputable. But fortunately, he had General Dohrmann's support, and I want you to know, General Quinn, he called me and assured me that you weren't that bad. So that's why I voted to confirm you. You know, I've been to a lot of events here. We all have. And every event has a lot of generals, but I got to tell you, this is a record. I'm quite certain. I've never been so surrounded by, even in the Pentagon, you don't see this many generals. And there's a bunch of them. But I have to tell you this, when I think of 30 years of this place, I think, John, you and I came into state government at the same time in 1993 in the Schaefer administration, and of course, that was roughly 30 years ago. In the years I can tell, I didn't have the advantage of Common Core math, but I think it was roughly 30 years ago. And Keith Bierke was our adjutant general at the time. And Mac handed the keys just in time. And Keith, I'm telling you, I'm not exaggerating when I tell you, if I ever do write memoirs, if Shirley will help me, you're going to have 3 chapters. When I think of the work he did during those years, and the way he did it, the cheerful demeanor, he never had to flash the stars except for one Corps of Engineers colonel once after the flood, Murray. You remember that? Yeah. Mm-hmm. That'll be a chapter in and of itself. Murray Sagsby will make that chapter. But 30 years, and I remember this, you guys, and this really is the point I want to drive home today. Because it's already been referred to as hallowed grounds, there's no question about that. I've served on church council, which was a lot tougher than being in the United States Senate. And when I think of that early fight over what color the stones should be, whether they should be granite gray or white, realizing there was really no option, and it reminded me of the ladies' aid that wanted to make sure that the carpet color is right in church, remember? It seems like a really big deal at the time. And then 30 years later, you look at all of this and you think, wow, that was a silly fight to have. That was a silly argument. Because what makes these grounds hallowed aren't the stones, right? It's not even this beautiful place. It's not the spectacular view. It's not even the incredible grass. Thank you very much, David Anderson. It's the heroes that are buried here. That's what makes it hallowed. As great as our facilities are, and they are great, and that Burial Equity Act you'd have thought should have been easier. But I want to also say thank you, Secretary Quinn and Secretary Macdonald, for supporting the effort legislatively. It matters a great deal when you have the cabinet supporting something that you're going to impose on them to deliver. These are big fights to have, right? But at the end of the day, what's hallowed is in this ground is under the ground. And hallowed is a special word. It means something. Holy means something. Sacred means something. It means set apart. It's set apart. Just like heroes are set apart. There's a Welsh actor by the name of John Rhys Davies. He's played a lot of roles in acting. And he said, in the film world, everyone gets to be a hero. But in the real world, where being a hero can mean losing your life or even lives of your loved ones, very few people are willing to take that chance and make that sacrifice. Which is why, with real heroes, we set them apart. We set them apart. It's the very definition of it. And while not every single veteran buried here today, the 7,700 or so, or all of those that ever will be, while not all of them made the ultimate sacrifice for our liberty, every one of them is willing to. That sets them apart, see, from those of us that weren't. So, thank you. Congratulations to all of you who have worked on this all those years. On the big fights, on the little fights, on the skirmishes, on the fundraising. By the way, the one wall, John, you know what it reminds me so much of? I used to walk by it all the time in Washington. That's the Disabled Veterans Memorial Wall. The ghosting of those beautiful photos is just spectacular. But thank you for staying with it and caring so much about it, for having the vision to even think it, Mac. I mean, really, what were you thinking when this was just a prairie? Well, without, Scripture tells us, right, that without vision, people perish. Well, this was a great vision, and thanks for making it come true. And while I've deviated a little bit from it in recent speeches, I had this wonderful experience yesterday up at Newtown, the Mandan, Hidatsa, Rikara Nation, where they had a Veterans Appreciation Day, and to help commemorate it, they brought in, if you can imagine, they invited and they accepted the U.S. Marine Corps Silent Drill Platoon. If you've never seen them, you probably don't watch enough NFL football. They're regular performers at halftime in the big arenas of our country. But they wanted to come to Indian country. I think a little bit of it had to do with the fact that the chairman up there is a Marine and a whole bunch of other people. And I happen to have this weird distinction on the Armed Services Committee as being the ranking member of the Sea Power Subcommittee. I know, it's hard to figure out, but I am. And so there I was with a bunch of Marines. And what I loved about, if you've never seen these guys perform, it's because what's so interesting is they do it silent. They have no commands. 24 in perfect precision, performing these incredible maneuvers with this 10.5-pound rifle in their hand, where they toss, and it's got a bayonet on the other side, by the way. That's where the real risk comes in. They twirl them, they throw them, they pass them to each other, they clean them. It's an amazing thing. But here's what I love. The Mandan, Hidatsa, Rikara people invited the children. That's why places like this are so important, and moments like this are important. They invited the children who may never know someone who pays the price for their liberty. But they need to know there's a price for their liberty. And these kids didn't restrain themselves in expressing their appreciation to a silent group, performing these incredible acts. And I thought, what a blessing it was to see these Marines blessing them and seeing them blessing them back. They broke all the protocols, and it was wonderful. And I thought to myself as I sat there watching hundreds of screaming kids appreciate 24 active Marines, I thought to myself, we're going to be okay. We're going to be okay. We just have to keep telling the story and hope they don't have to live it. But grateful for those who were willing to and who have. And so I end with the fourth verse again of the national anthem, which I refuse to sing, but I'm happy to recite. Oh, thus be it ever when free men shall stand between their loved home and the war's desolation. Blessed with victory and peace may this heaven-rescued land praise the power that has made and preserves us a nation. Then conquer we must if our cause it is just, and this be our motto, in God is our trust. Then the Star-Spangled Banner in triumph shall wave. We're the land of the free and the home of the brave. Thank you. God bless you.
Thank you. Is there any doubt that our two United States Senators are passionate about their support for veterans? You may not have served, gentlemen, but we know you have our back. Matthew T. Quinn was nominated by President Biden and confirmed by the Senate on June 17, 2021, to serve as the 7th Undersecretary for Memorial Affairs. He leads 155 VA national cemeteries and 121 VA grant-funded and tribal veterans cemeteries in providing a dignified burial in national shrines for veterans and eligible family members. He is a retired Major General, having served nearly 37 years in the Army and the Army National Guard, culminating in his selection as the 27th Adjutant General for the state of Montana. He is a combat veteran of Operations Desert Storm and Iraqi Freedom. Please welcome Undersecretary Matt Quinn.
Well, after following our two senators and taking the verbal abuse that I did, having served in the other best National Guard in the nation, the Montana National Guard, I'm rethinking my remarks, but I'm going to press forward. Senator Hoeven, Senator Craven, my good friend Al Dohrmann, Dave Spritzanatic, who when I started as TAG, Dave was the TAG here in North Dakota, veterans and distinguished guests. It's great, actually, to be back here in Mandan, North Dakota. This is my second trip as Undersecretary for Memorial Affairs. I'll tell you, North Dakota holds a special place in my heart. My grandfather, Virgil Van Fossen, was a member of the North Dakota National Guard, was activated, mobilized for World War I, served in World War I in the European theater, and then came back into the National Guard and left as a member, proud member of the North Dakota National Guard. He raised my mother in Devil's Lake, North Dakota. My wife, Jody, was born in Jamestown, North Dakota. Now, the fact that all of them moved to Montana should have no bearing on the rest of my remark, but North Dakota holds a special place. So we're here to celebrate the 30th anniversary, and I will tell you, I do agree with Senator Hoeven. This is, I'll qualify it as one of the finest national or state grant cemeteries that are out there. It really is a beautiful place, and the team has just done an incredible goal. Our goal within National Cemetery Administration is that 95% of veterans should have a national cemetery or a state grant veteran cemetery within 75 miles of where they live. And this is something that the national government is not going to do on their own. In fact, we are approaching where we have, if we haven't already surpassed, more state, tribal, territorial grant cemeteries, veteran cemeteries out there than we do national cemeteries that are open. So it's so very important to us who hold the banner for veterans that have served with the final benefit. I told the Secretary the other day, this is the final benefit that veteran will ever have gifted to her or him. granted to her or him. They will go through, veterans will go through the Veterans Health Administration, they'll go through and use Veterans Benefits Administration, but it is the National Cemetery Administration in partnership with states like North Dakota that provide the final and perpetual benefit that that veteran earned through her or his service, and that the family earned through her or his sacrifice so that that veteran can serve. The federal government's not going to do it on our own. It is with states like North Dakota that we will give those veterans a cemetery within 75 miles. We're close. We're at 94%. We're going to get there in partnership with the states. So here last week I had a team out. They regularly go out and survey and inspect cemeteries. And I want to give you the results. I was given permission. We all have to get permission, right? I was given permission that I could talk about the results at the North Dakota State Veterans Cemetery. So in the medium priority category, medium priority for us is grounds maintenance, it's facilities maintenance, equipment maintenance, and overall safety. North Dakota State Veterans Cemetery achieved a 95% score. That's high. That's good. But more importantly, on the critical requirements, what we deem critical to mission success, what the veterans consider critical for mission success, North Dakota State Veterans Cemetery received a 100% score in interment operations and customer satisfaction. There's national cemeteries that don't achieve a 100% score in that. And so Pam, to you and the entire team here, my hat's off to you, and the veterans of North Dakota should know how well you do. When it comes time to provide those final honors to a veteran who has served, we have a saying within NCA, you have one chance to get it right. And it's so very true. You have one chance for the nation or the state to recognize the service of that veteran one final time. And I will just tell you, based upon those scores and based upon what I've seen here, that memo, that motto, you have one chance to get it right, is absolutely ingrained by Pam and her entire team. And so again, Pam, great work to you. Senator Hoeven, Senator Cramer, thank you for all your continued support and leadership in supporting the Department of Veterans Affairs, especially the National Cemetery Administration. Your support for veterans is without question. And I will tell you, they let me know the day I was nominated of their care for veterans across this country, as well as here in North Dakota. And boy, did they let me know. So I'm honored to both senators to be here with you on this 30th anniversary cemetery. And it's been mentioned, as the former adjutant general for the state of Montana that served with such incredible women and men who volunteered to do whatever that state needed in terms of safety, public safety, response to disasters, or national call-ups. I was so very proud to serve with each and every National Guard men and women that are willing to serve. But we were able to get the burial equity for Guard and Reserve passed, and I will tell you, with strong, incredible pressure and support from Senators Hoeven and Senator Cramer. And it is so duly just that we recognize the service of those individuals who potentially never got that call, never got the chance to mobilize, but still raised their right hand and swore an oath to the state and to the nation. And those individuals ought to have a place, a national shrine for their families and for the state and the nation to recognize their service. It's so very important, and it was long overdue. So again, I'll close. I'm greatly honored to be here with each of you today. Thank you for everything that you do for our veterans. The support here is evident here in the great state of North Dakota. May God bless our veterans, their families, the great state of North Dakota, screwed that up, and the great state of Montana, and our United States of America, land of the free because of the brave. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Secretary Quinn. Alexander Macdonald joined the North Dakota Air National Guard in 1948 at the age of 19 as a mechanic, and then when the unit was activated for the Korean War, he went to flight school, flying 36 missions as an air controller in Korea. He has flown over 9,000 hours in all kinds of aircraft. He commanded the 119th Fighter Group for a number of years, during which time the unit won the coveted William Tell Award 3 times. He earned the highest rating as an air defense pilot, Master of Air Defense, as well as numerous individual awards. But there's one award some of you may have heard stories about, but most of you don't know the details. And the details are worth telling. It was November 1967. Then Lieutenant Colonel Macdonald was flying a 4-engine C-54 aircraft from Springfield, Illinois to Bismarck. About 45 minutes into the flight, a malfunction on one of the engines on the right wing caused the propeller to spin out of control, generating enough heat to start an oil fire. Mac went into a dive to put the fire out, but the flames had burned through the engine mounts, causing the engine to tear loose from the wing, smashing against the side of the aircraft, damaging the landing gear before falling to the ground. Looking out at the flames on the wing, the passengers in the aircraft, none other than Governor Bill Guy and First Lady Jane, held hands and thought they had about 5 seconds to live. The right wheel wouldn't budge. It had been damaged by the engine. Mac is quoted as saying that was more of a problem than the missing engine, because when they tried to land, the aircraft would skid on the runway and causing a fire in the wing. So how to land? He rejected 2 airfields, selecting one he knew would have adequate firefighting capability. The landing gear did eventually go down. It did hold during the landing, but he had to do a dead stick landing because the hydraulics had failed, and he skidded off the runway into a grassy field. No one was hurt. Then Lieutenant Colonel Macdonald, Lieutenant Colonel Thornton Beckland, and Sergeant Dale Ness received the North Dakota Distinguished Service Medal for successfully landing the aircraft and saving the lives of all of those on board. Fast forward to 1991. General Macdonald had been serving as Adjutant General since 1984. The state was still regaining momentum after Desert Storm, which was a big deal. That was the first mobilization of National Guard units since the Korean War, almost 40 years earlier. When Colonel Jim Hoop retired as Public Affairs Officer and I was hired for the post, I learned that General Macdonald, knowing that he would most likely retire the next year in 1993, had quite a bucket list for 1992. Here's what we're going to do, he said. First, we're going to start planning to host the 1993 Adjutant General Association Conference in Bismarck. That's about 70 general officers, the first time that had ever been done in North Dakota before, and thankfully not ever again. When Colonel he said, in June 1992, we're going to host a parade combined with Governor's Day and a public open house, the largest event ever held at Camp Grafton to celebrate the 50th anniversary of World War II. Third, in October 1992, we're going to take infantry soldiers from the 164th Infantry Regiment back to Guadalcanal on the 50th anniversary landing there in 1942. And oh, by the way, we're going to open and dedicate the North Dakota Veterans Cemetery in July and August of 92. So here we were then. I was the MC, and he was the keynote speaker. Fast forward 30 years, and here we are now. I am pleased, once again, to introduce a man with courage, experience, wonderfully grand ideas, and unlimited determination. Major General Alex Macdonald.
I think she did a nice job. I wrote that out. kind of bad. She got it pretty well. Senator Cramer, Senator Hoeven, pardon me, Senator Cramer, Secretary Quinn, General Dohrmann, veterans, ladies and gentlemen. This facility that we're redecorating today, the North Dakota Veterans Cemetery, is a culmination of a long and sometimes seemingly impossible task. A cemetery for North Dakota military veterans has been on the mind of North Dakota's leadership for many years. Adjutants General Heber Edwards and Adjutant General LeClaire Melhouse both attempted to get a national cemetery in the state. And that would have been placed in Devil's Lake, North Dakota, and they were willing to give the national veterans the land free. Well, they answered the request by stating that we had access to Fort Snelling and later the Black Hills National Cemetery. North Dakota's population and number of veterans did not meet the need and therefore a requirement for a national cemetery. Subsequently, Major General Murray and myself did not really push for one because there had been zero results so far. And then things began to change. A National Guard member, Murray Sagsby, stopped by the office one day and told of seeing a state veterans cemetery and touring it. I don't remember the state, but he was impressed by how it was controlled and maintained by the state. We began to toy with the idea of a state cemetery here in North Dakota. The more it was discussed, and believe me, it was discussed, the more we became enamored with the idea of establishing one here in our state. It seemed the only thing that's stopping us was money and land, which made it a seemingly impossible task. Surprisingly, the solution came fairly rapidly. Governor George Sinner, an enthusiastic supporter, was instrumental in getting the 1989 state legislature to pass a bill which stated that the Adjutant General shall establish and operate the North Dakota Veterans Cemetery, which the Adjutant General will locate within or adjacent to Fort Abraham Lincoln State Park. In addition, the Adjutant General was given the power to accept and spend private and federal funds. At that time, the state did not allocate any money for establishing the cemetery, but we all agreed that it was nice of them to allow us to spend any money we could raise. Governor Sinner had the director of the North Dakota Parks and Recs turn over land that belonged to the state, but was scheduled to be added to the Fort Lincoln State Park, to the Adjutant General for the Veterans Cemetery. Gary Helgeson, our judge advocate, was instrumental in getting the necessary deeds and other requirements taken care of so that we could begin construction. Members of our National Guard, and International Guard, stepped forward. Larry Dennis was the lead in designing the facility. And as you can tell by looking around, he did a magnificent job. Now we had the land and the design. All we needed was the money and the facility. We are fortunate that our state guard was heavy in engineering, which means we had the necessary skills available to construct the cemetery if we had the funds, and that was a big if. To buy the materials for them to work with so we could proceed. Ron Gangas was able to get those funds from the National Guard Bureau. They were used to train our soldiers and airmen in their military skills. What more could we ask for? On a cold, windy April 11th, 1990, the groundbreaking was held. After the ceremony, Secretary of State Ben Meyer presented us with our first donation, a check for $1,000. It gave us the feeling that the operation of a cemetery was possible. Over the next 2 years, our soldiers and our airmen did the majority of their training working on the cemetery. Under the direction of Bob Schulte and his staff, they moved the dirt, poured the concrete, constructed the buildings, put in a sprinkler system, brought in water and electricity, and built the access roads. 2 years and 3 months later, it was in operation. On 7 July 1992, the first interment was held. A World War II veteran, Clyde R.N.s, was laid to rest. I understand that members of his family are here. Would you stand, please, so we can acknowledge you? They were the first family to take a chance, maybe, on this cemetery. You can only imagine what it looked like, a single grave on a windswept North Dakota prairie. 16 more were interred that first July, 67 total in 1992. Then on August 30th, 1992, the cemetery was dedicated. Here we are 30 years and 1 day later. During those 30 years, our interments are now at over 600 per year. 7,500, over 7,500 veterans, 3,300 dependents, nearly 11,000 are now here at rest. We originally had Phil Miller, and now have Pam Helbling Schaefer, whose ideas and day-to-day management of the operation of the cemetery were and now are responsible for its appearance and function and good score. Thank you, Secretary Quinn. It would be remiss to not recognize the literally hundreds of volunteers who mowed the grass, kept the grounds in immaculate condition. It would also be remiss not to mention that the state now provides the majority of funds it takes to operate the facility day to day. And then there is a cemetery foundation that, from your contributions, provides the major financial contributions for machinery and construction. What lies in the future? The most important addition to our cemetery will be a columbarium, a structure which will hold urns that were cremated. One has been designed. It will have over 2,200 niches and be constructed to your left, or your right as you drive in, to your left now. And we are ready to begin construction next spring. All that remains for the Veterans Administration to approve the designs. Since we have the Undersecretary here today, I'm confident he will ensure that the approval process will be handled with due promptness. Am I right, Mr. Secretary? Just a nod of the head will suffice.
I'm here.
I see the nod. Will all of you here today who worked on this cemetery, either during construction, as volunteers or employment, please stand so we can express our thanks for your achievement. So that's the story of the cemetery. But that's not the real reason we are gathered here today and gather every Memorial Day. We gather to honor the memory of our comrades, our brothers and sisters, the men and women interred here. The stories of their service and sacrifice are part of our state and nation's history. For a brief moment in that history, They held our national destiny in their hands. John Murray, a Civil War veteran and member of Company F, 2nd Minnesota Volunteer Cavalry. Born in Pennsylvania, enlisted in Minnesota, served in the Dakota Territory, and in 1900 homesteaded in North Dakota. 2 Congressional Medal of Honor winners from the Spanish-American War, a native son of Minnesota, Charles Davis, who enlisted in the Valley City unit, and Thomas Slutland, a Norwegian immigrant who enlisted in Grafton, both members of the 1st North Dakota Volunteer Infantry. And the accounts of the services of those that rest here goes on and on. They came from the farms, the small towns, and the cities of our state and nation. They came from ordinary families in ordinary homes. They were Native Americans and immigrants. They were laborers and lawyers, farmers and doctors, mechanics and bankers, every nationality, every profession. They volunteered or were drafted, both men and women. They served as enlisted or officer in every branch of service. Some were professional military, most were civilian soldiers. It mattered not. They served this country in its time of need. They did their duty. They recognized that the privileges we enjoy are not simply for the asking. They were obtained at great cost, and the struggle to retain them is never ending. Over 1 million of our sons and daughters have paid the ultimate sacrifice. Their acts of selfless devotion serve to protect us in our way of life, where freedom does not come free as a gift. It is paid for by those who have served, are serving, or will serve. They deserve our respect and admiration. Our national anthem closes with a question. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner still wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave? Thankfully, the answer is yes. And it is because of those who served. Although the circumstances are vastly different, the words of Abraham Lincoln, address given the dedication of Gettysburg Cemetery, with a few changes, can ring true today. He said, "This cemetery provides a final resting place for those who serve their state and nation and offered their lives so that this nation might live." We come here today to rededicate this facility. It is altogether fitting and proper that we should do this. But in a larger sense, we cannot dedicate, we cannot consecrate, we cannot hallow this ground. Those men and women and their dependents who are lying here have consecrated it far more above our power to add or detract. This cemetery will continue to serve as a memorial to the dedication, devotion, and commitment of those resting here, be they veteran or dependent. It matters not, for they all have served and given so much that we might enjoy the blessings of freedom, purchased by their sacrifice. Those who lay here today did not fail us. We must not fail them. May God grant them eternal rest, and to us, our children, to our children's children, peace. God bless the state. God bless the United States of America.
Courage, experience, wonderfully grand ideas, and unlimited determination. Thank you, General Macdonald. The 188th Army National Guard Brass Quintet, led by Sergeant Gus Tanberg, will now perform Hero by Charles McCallion, a former member of the Marine Corps Band. This selection evokes images of a hero's triumphant return from battle and pays tribute to those heroes who live among us. Just like stories of shared courage and bravery, each musician takes a turn in the spotlight, with the melody tracing through the 5 parts. Ladies and gentlemen, Army National Guard Brass Quintet. Thank you. I'm pleased to announce that our next speaker is the Adjutant General of the North Dakota National Guard, Major General Al Dohrmann.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. I'm a huge fan of the 1-hour ceremony. That's not going to happen today. And I was going to open with, I'll be brief, but now that there's a nice breeze and I'm in the shade, I don't know if I want to be brief. I know we're pretty smart about how we set these things up. If you notice, the authorizer and the appropriator are in the shade, and the secretary is slowly moving into the shade. Those of us in the military are still in the sun. But it's great to be with you today. Great turnout. Thanks all for being part of this special day. If you showed up today to hear me give a speech, I'm sorry, that's not going to happen. Anybody come here just to hear me? Okay, never mind then. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Come see me afterwards. Yeah, we specifically entitled this acknowledgement because I really want to just take some time to express some gratitude. Is the current guy responsible for operating and maintaining the cemetery, and I can tell you with the team we have, that's probably one of the easiest things on my job description, is operating and maintaining the North Dakota National Guard or the North Dakota Veterans Cemetery. Before I get into some thank yous and some acknowledgement, I just want to share some thoughts from the governor. We're very blessed to have a governor that is totally committed to the North Dakota National Guard, our military, our veterans, and their families. He wasn't able to be here today, but he did issue a proclamation which I'd like to share with you at this time. Whereas the service and sacrifice of the men and women who serve in the branch of the United States military has earned the deepest respect of all North Dakotans, and the state of North Dakota is committed to designating time, policy, and space that demonstrate the state's and the citizens' appreciation and gratitude for their service. And whereas in 1989, during the 51st Legislative Assembly, the North Dakota Legislature passed Senate Bill 2381, authorizing the creation of the State Veterans Cemetery. And whereas the establishment of the State Veterans Cemetery was supported by all North Dakotans with both public funds and the generous private donations used to create and maintain this magnificent facility. And whereas beginning with the construction efforts, the North Dakota National Guard has been deeply involved in the building, maintenance, and operation of the North Dakota Veterans Cemetery. And whereas more than 10,700 military veterans and their family members are interned at the North Dakota Veterans Cemetery, beginning with the first veteran laid to rest there on July 7, 1992. And whereas the North Dakota Veterans Cemetery provides military veterans and their families a respectful, hallowed, and beautiful eternal resting place. And whereas the North Dakota Veterans Cemetery is a place of reflection, and the grounds include monuments and plaques memorializing the action of North Dakota units in World War II, a monument to North Dakota's prisoners of war, and a monument to those missing in action, all of which occupy a prominent position at the cemetery. And whereas on August 30th, 1992, the North Dakota Veterans Cemetery was formally dedicated. Now therefore, as Governor of the state of North Dakota, I do hereby proclaim August 30th, 2022, North Dakota Veterans Cemetery Recognition Day in the state of North Dakota. Signed, Doug Burgum, witness, Al Jaeger, Secretary of State. And now a little bit of gratitude and then some recognition. First, Pam Helbling, she's already been highlighted in her crew, but what incredible work they do there, or do here. Secretary Quinn mentioned that in the critical category we got 100%. In the other category, it was 95%. But I can tell you, Secretary Quinn sends like dozens and dozens of people in here to get after Pam and her staff. And that 5% was, I think, 3 blades of grass that weren't trimmed around one headstone. That's how good this team did out here. But Pam and her team, every day, they just provide a atmosphere, an environment of dignity and respect for all those that come here to visit or come here to intern their loved one. But Pam, we couldn't do it without you. As mentioned, the volunteers, we've had an army of lawnmowers over the years volunteer their time to come out here, mow the lawn, save the state a ton of money. But those volunteers really do keep this place rolling every day. The volunteers have been on the initial Militia Foundation, now the North Dakota Veterans Cemetery Foundation. We recognized them earlier, but thank you for your service. AMVETS, the AMVETS Auxiliary, who I believe are providing our treats for us today. Thank you, and all our veteran service organizations for being part of this day and supporting us every single day. The folks on my team, Public Affairs Office, Shirley and her contributions to this event, the cemetery staff for putting this event on. Our congressional delegation, I know when Secretary Quinn called me up, said I'm being nominated for this position, can you put in a good word with your senators for me? I said I will absolutely do that, but be careful what you ask for. Fair warning, right? Fair warning, but we have a dedicated congressional delegation, and the things that Secretary Quinn and I talked about before he went to confirmation, I can assure you that our senators and our congressmen are absolutely in lockstep and understand what our needs are here in North Dakota. Secretary Quinn, always great to see you. I love that every once in a while you mix up Montana and North Dakota in our favor. That's awesome. But Secretary Quinn's been a good friend. I consider him a friend. I haven't checked if that's mutual, but I consider him a friend. And is the right man in this job right now. I do know how much he cares for our military. I do know how much he cares for a veteran. And I can't think of a better person to be in that job right now. And then it's already been mentioned, but everybody that came together to build this facility. We were doing some strategic planning this morning with the Veterans Cemetery Foundation Board. Greg Wills was helping us through that process and shared some of the stories from way back, but just incredible stories of coming together under the leadership of General Macdonald to get this facility built. But an incredible team, they've all been mentioned, but again, thank you for being part of this day. And finally, all those that joined us today. They're passing water out, good, I am going long. But thank you for being here. Hot day in August, sun beating down on all of you, school's in session. But looking around the audience today, there's a lot of folks here that have a special connection with this facility. Whether you helped construct it, you've helped maintain it over the years, you have a loved one buried here. This is an incredible place. I'm glad to see our state legislators here. Every once in a while I would put my hand out and say, hey, we need more help, and we've got incredible support from our state legislators. So thank you for that support. Now before I close, I have one more piece of business. I've known General Macdonald probably since I joined the Guard in 1991. I knew of him. He scared the crap out of me when I first met him. I remember when I first started drilling, my wife, Becky, she was in the National Guard. I was drilling in Valley City. I was swinging by Valley City to pick her up to go back to Grand Forks. She let me know the Macdonalds were playing bridge at the Solbergs. And I said, I will not come into the house. That man scares the heck out of me. And I did. And by the way, you still scare me. We should not be in this uniform, but Max said, you know, maybe we should have short sleeves and open collar. And when Max says something like that, that to me is a direct order. So we're in short sleeves and open collar. Apologies to the secretary who asked, well, and the senators too, they're still in their ties. But the stories I've heard of General Macdonald over the years, and we can talk about, and he will be the first, and he already has said that it took a family, it took an army, it took everybody to make this a reality, what we're celebrating here today. But the guy that set the tone for all that set the vision. And I've heard stories too where, boy, I don't think I'd want to have been the lawyer or the facility or DFE during that time period. I mean, I think you guys went out in the marbles to get this thing done, but he didn't. I don't think Mac would ever do your job for you, but he darn sure would set the expectation of what he needed out of you and then empower you to get that done. So on this day where we celebrate the 30th anniversary, I do want to take a moment. Where is it, Shirley? In there? Okay.
Got it?
If my portion looks fresh and unrehearsed, it is. Which begs the question, have ever been rehearsed? But anyway, General Macdonald, if you would join me at the podium. So I just want to read this. It's a plaque that we're presenting to General Macdonald today. It says, in tribute to Major General Alexander P. Macdonald, founding father of the North Dakota Veterans Cemetery. Major General Macdonald was instrumental in establishing the North Dakota Veterans Cemetery. He worked tirelessly with the North Dakota legislature and various state agencies, led efforts to secure funding to support future operations and maintenance requirements, and had the foresight to establish a nonprofit foundation with the mission of assisting in the perpetual care of the cemetery. Major General Macdonald's vision and leadership created one of the premier state veterans cemetery in the nation. So, sir, I just wanted to present this to you for all your hard work. And I'm going to let you speak in a minute. I got one more thing to say. I heard a story, I think, from General Gagnes, that after the building was completed and Mac was walking around the grounds with his people, he made the statement along the lines of, "Nobody's damn picture is ever hanging in this building." Well, you were in charge then, you're not now. I agree with you, but you're no longer in charge. And again, you scare me very much, but you're no longer in charge. So to my left, we'll unveil a, what's the right word for that? It's not the actual one, it's still being built, but the plaque that will hang in the administration building of Major General Alexander P. Macdonald is the founding father of the North Dakota Veterans Cemetery. Sir, thank you for your service, and thank you for making this incredible facility a reality. If you have any parting shots for me, the podium is all yours, sir.
I have been given credit for something that I didn't do. The North Dakota Veterans Cemetery is a product of those who stood here today and a lot of other people, and believe me, their names should be on that plaque. I'm sorry they're not.
Well, thank you, General Macdonald. I need to highlight too, it was the Veterans Cemetery Foundation Board that came together that wanted to recognize you today, sir. This is exactly the reaction we thought we would get from General Macdonald. But it's true to who he has always been. And so, piggybacking on what General Macdonald said, for everyone in the audience today, everyone who may view this later on, for your contributions to making this a reality and what it is today. Thank you for that. Thank you for your service. And thank you once again for joining us today.
Congratulations, General Macdonald, and thank you, General Dohrmann. The headline of the Nodak Guardsman 30 years ago said, "North Dakota dedicates a dream." And I think we can all see that that dream is still coming true. Just a couple of administrative remarks. All presenters, as well as current and former adjutants general, are asked to remain here in the area for photos immediately after the event. And all individuals involved in the planning, construction, and operation of the North Dakota Veterans Cemetery are asked to step to the flag plaza right after this event so that we can get a group photo for this historic occasion. Chaplain Dave Johnson will now render the benediction.
Join with me as we close in prayer. Gracious God, as we leave the North Dakota Veterans Cemetery today, we thank you for the courageous men and women who've served in our nation's military throughout the history of this great country, for their courage, their dedication and sacrifice, and for the loved ones who made it possible for them to serve. We give you thanks. For the many freedoms that we enjoy and for all who paid the sacrifice to secure this freedom, we give you thanks. As we think about all who served and continue to serve to secure our way of life, we thank you once again for a place like the North Dakota Veterans Cemetery, a place where those who've worn the nation's cloth can be laid to rest, a place to reflect on the veterans' service to our state and nation, and finally a place where we can give thanks for the life that we shared with these fine men and women. In your holy and precious name we pray. Amen.
Thank you all for attending. This concludes today's historic ceremony.